When a major life event occurs, you call your friends, they come and join you in your kitchen, and you sit down and you figure out the next steps. Kitchen Chats is all about those moments. I'm your host, Aimee Kandrac, and I invite you to come in, have a seat, grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine, and let's figure everything out together. After all, that's what friends do. Hi, and welcome to What Friends Do, the podcast. I am Aimee Kandrac, founder of What Friends Do and your host. Today, I have with me my friend, Dr. Samantha Franklin, and we are going to be talking about all of the things that you can do to help a family with children or children when there's some major life event. And when thinking of the guest who I wanted to speak with about this, Samantha came to mind immediately because you have spent your life as a child of an educator, as a school guidance counselor, now as an educator of educators, and as a mother, and married to an educator. And probably there are some more education things in here that I don't even know about. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
And I know that you will be able to wear not only your educator hats, but also your mother hat and all of the other hats around that.
Always do.
I know you do. I appreciate it. So to start off, we're in my kitchen. Thank you for joining me. And as a reminder to listeners, the reason that we're in the kitchen is because when something crazy in life happens, you call your friends, they come and they sit at your kitchen counter and you start to solve the problems. And it starts usually with listening, but it moves into, okay, let's figure out how we're gonna support each other. So do you have a kitchen counter moment that you're willing to share with anyone?
I have a lot of moments. So I'm African American for your listeners who obviously can't see me. And so in our community, it's not really kitchen counter as much as kitchen table.
Right.
And so as a family, we've always gathered around a table to discuss whatever it is. But when I think about our kitchen table or kitchen counter moments, I think about my sister-in-law, and in our family we just call sisters. So my sister-in-law and my cousin-in-law, the three of us have what's called a wine club. Mm-hmm. And we don't always drink wine by any stretch of the means, but what we do is get together at the table and we can sit there for hours and talk, sometimes about funny stuff, sometimes about really dramatic things and life events, and then we go back to funny, about children, about marriage, about dating, about being a woman who's premenopausal, all those things that people don't tell you in life that happen. And so I think about the wine club quite a bit, and just our meetings, if you'll say, aren't necessarily planned.
Right.
But it's maybe we're dropping off cousins to visit, and maybe I'll just come in for a minute. That turns into like 4 or 5 hours. You know, you're ordering food because you didn't plan on being there for that duration of time, and the kids are peeking in like, I guess we get to stay longer, and they go back. But a lot of those moments just happen at the table very organically.
Yes.
And then you start talking about things that you probably didn't intend to share, but it feels good to get it out. It feels good to release it. Right there at the table. And so I think about a lot, that I have MS, and I talk about the trials and tribulations of having that a lot at the table with the two of them.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And before this house, I didn't have a counter either, and it was always the kitchen table. And the organicness of those conversations, I think, is what is so special.
It is. Yeah, you usually don't intend to have anything happen there but eating, cooking, whatever. But 2 people is a party. And it can go on from there, and then people come in and drop in and also have a seat. And if everyone who's coming in is someone who's trustworthy, you just keep talking. And then they share and it goes on.
That is something that every one of my guests has the opportunity to remind us about, which is who is allowed a seat at that table and who is allowed to have information at the table, and who's allowed to take information away from the table.
Correct.
And as we dive in and start to talk about all of our precious babies, that gets even more sensitive.
It does. It does. And so for the wine club, when the guys come, we call it wine pairings. And it's a whole...
I love that so much.
Yeah, and so when the pairs come, it's a different dynamic on the same conversation, a different perspective. Sometimes it's funnier, sometimes it's much more solemn. It just depends on what we're doing. They're not always invited.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
They're certainly welcome always if they drop in, but I like having them there too. Sometimes just to offer a different perspective on whatever it is that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's really nice. And how nice for your kids to see that community, and probably without even understanding the importance of that.
Correct. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. A couple of years before COVID, we started the Kool-Aid Club, which was the girls, and the girls were preteens at that time. And they had their club. We did vision boards all at the table, vision boards with them, and talked about friends and when to let go, when to keep them. And so we had them sharing with us and us sharing with them. Even though we're this age, we still have issues with friends that we need to work through. And it was pretty cool doing that way too.
Yeah. Oh, that is really cool. I really like that a lot. Fun. Well, so you already shared that you have MS.
I do, yeah.
And I know you also have a kiddo with allergies. And that adds a whole new dynamic when, for your family, you might need help with something.
It does.
And I have a kiddo with allergies also. And we've been really lucky. Now he's 17 and we're down to only one of the 32 things that he was allergic to.
Yeah, I think we're down to 2. When she was in kindergarten, the joke that I made just to make myself sane was she can have fried water and boiled air. As everything else was off the table.
Everything else is off of the table. Exactly. Oh my gosh. Well, so what I want us to be able to chat about around that is, so when you're helping with kids, so for my family, I got really nervous if people wanted to bring us food or offer to take my kids, because there was so much around, okay, well, you can take them to the park, but don't go get ice cream afterwards. Or, there could be no food, no snacks, nothing like that involved. And I'm not saying every family has something like that, but a lot of families have things that you need to think about. It's not just, okay, great, I'll just take the kids for the day and help you out, right?
It's never that. It's never that, actually. It causes more anxiety for you to take the kids than it does for me to have them myself. So my 2, but mainly my daughter, has a lot of environmental allergies, and so people, let's meet up at the park. She can't go to the park. Or maybe we're at a friend's house, and maybe the agreement was you'd stay inside, but someone just cut the grass. Oh, it was nice outside, so I let them go play. She can't do that. So when I pick her up, she'd be swollen and hivey. And people with the most well-intentioned actions would end up causing her severe pain. And then the side effect of that is a lot of medication, staying home from school, doctor's appointments, trying to get her emergency room visits. Emergency room visits, immediate care. There was one January, we were emergency room immediate care every weekend.
Oh my gosh.
For her.
Oh my gosh.
The pediatric infectious disease specialist, and all those things that people don't normally have to worry about, we had to worry about. I remember having my first panic attack. Was a beautiful sunny day in the spring. She was in kindergarten, and all I could think of was, it's a sunny day outside. She's going to go outside for PE, and they're going to kill her. Even though they know not to take her outside for PE, it happened more than once. So her teacher was very good, never took her outside for recess, but it was always the exchange of hands. And sometimes the information wouldn't go with it. One time she told the PE teacher, I can't go outside. And the response was, we'll just be there for 5 minutes. We ended up in the emergency room that night. So it's always much better for me to keep my kids with me. That taking the kids is generally not helpful. Not for me. And you talked about food, also generally not helpful.
Food is not a helpful thing coming into our house. There's only a few people. And so that's the other thing. There must be a few people in your support network you probably had to rely on, because when you're in the emergency room, what about the other 2 kiddos?
They usually came with us.
Okay.
Usually came with us. If my mom was available, I could swing by and drop them off with her. So my husband, as a track coach, the weekends he's usually out of town. So either I could swing by, drop them off with my mom, or sometimes she would meet me. But generally on our way to the ER, and this is when they were smaller, I'd pack up Kindles, pack snacks, pack, whatever, and we'd go there with her. My mom I trust with food, hands down. We have a dear friend, Grace, I trust with food. My sister-in-law, my cousin-in-law. That's probably about it. And they were, when she was smaller. Right now, like you said, she only has just the tree nuts right now that we have to worry about. So I think everyone's allergic to nuts at some point.
I think so.
So nuts are not a problem. It was the other stuff.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
The other stuff. Yeah, the tree nuts. I'm like, oh, tree nuts.
Yeah, we can do that.
That's
we can do
easy.
that. I remember we went to a birthday party, and the hostess, bless her heart, she'd gotten gluten-free bread and all the gluten-free crackers, and she prepared in advance for her so well, but they also had egg in them. And they also had something else she couldn't have, and I felt so bad because she spent a small fortune trying to make sure that everything was there that she could eat, and she couldn't eat any of it. Oh,
we have had the same thing, or because we had like sesame seed and flax seed also, and it's hard to think about all of them.
It is.
It's really hard.
It is hard. So you just bring your own food. You just bring your own food.
You just bring your own food. And when they get older, it makes it a lot easier.
It does. And you ask the host or hostess, what are you having? And then you bring something similar, for your child to have, so it's not completely different.
Right.
Because all they want to do is be normal.
They just want to be normal.
Yep.
They just want to be normal. So our kids, it was food allergies, but a lot of these kids, it's cancer, or their parent just passed away, or something's going on in their house. Maybe it's a divorce, or lots of different things that could be happening in their life, and they just want to be normal. And that's where I think friends and family can step in and help, and school can hopefully step in, because unfortunately life's not normal at that instant, and more support is generally needed around there. So talking about things that people maybe can do, so helping out with rides to and from all of the soccer practices and football practices, and then games, and then your other kid needs to go to another thing. And if people who are already going there can help with transportation, I think that's a really big one.
That is a big one. Anything that's hands-on. No one wants to talk about it, but laundry is a big one. Cleaning is a big one. Reading bedtime stories.
Oh, reading bedtime stories. Oh, I love this. Let's talk about that.
Things that focus on the child's needs, really, because you think about the adult may be sick or the adult may be grieving, and they're not able to attend to the child.
Right.
So cooking with the little one, or reading bedtime stories, writing, doing arts and crafts, really the hands-on stuff.
What about helping with homework?
Helping with homework, that's a good one. Be sure you know what you're doing.
It's a little easier the younger they are. The older they are, I'm like, eh.
But yeah, helping with homework, or just sitting, watching a favorite movie with them. So the other adult in the house can get some rest and get some sleep. Just hands-on stuff with taking them shopping. Taking them for a haircut.
Yes. So we just kind of finished the back to school. I guess we're still, I don't know. I feel like back to school season lasts kind of forever.
Well, yeah, you've got the later start.
Well, we do have a later start also. But taking the kids and thinking about before school starts, do they need a haircut? Do they need new shoes? Because you bought them shoes a month ago and they've grown 4 inches since then. So they probably also need new shorts and new pants and the underwear. I mean, underwear's tricky.
Underwear's really tricky. Yeah. Especially for our young ladies. But yeah, they need something bigger than what they had last year.
they need, all of it needs to be bigger than what they had last year. And a backpack. And then first day of school, getting that school supply list and making sure that they have all of the things that they need, because that has got to be so hard. Like, you've got everything going on at home. Now you walk into the classroom and you still don't feel as assimilated into the group when you don't have all of the things that you might normally have.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. It's a challenge all the way around. Right? You talked about maybe like a parent has passed away. Recognizing for their child that first day of school when they see other parents in a drop-off line. Or, we used to have, students write down a note card, who lives with you? Things that would be hurtful to someone who is experiencing a loss at that time. Even for an animal, write down what your pet's name. Those things are triggers for a lot of people, and they may not know how to express what they need. So sometimes it's just sitting with them too.
Right.
And paying attention to facial expressions and body language.
And I bet that's something that you talk about a lot as you're educating teachers.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like being aware of all of these things.
Being aware. You got to be aware. Someone who's a well-renowned person actually was just posted about some conference that she was doing, but she was in a classroom and everyone was with her except for the one right in front of her. And the one right in front of her had her head down and her hands. So I messaged her and I said, that little one in the gray shirt in front is struggling. And so she messaged back. She said, I didn't even catch that. She's front and center of this.
Oh, goodness.
So, but when you're into the mood and you're looking out there, sometimes you miss what's right in front of you.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, that can go for so many.
Right.
So many spaces. What are some other things? I know you were a guidance counselor for a lot of years, and I think you saw a lot. But are there ways that listeners can think, get ideas for what their kids can do to support their friends?
Again, listen. Listen. It's interesting, too, because I think kids do a better job at it than adults do.
Oh, I think you're right.
I think they're more in tune, because they have, 11 years old or so. They get their own code of language and way of communicating that adults are not invited into that space. It's just them. And I think it's created, whether it's mumbling, texting, the different abbreviations that they have, they create their own space to communicate so that adults will not come in. But in that space, they're really good with supporting one another. Through difficult times, hard times. Because they're children, it's not always, I won't say appropriate, but it's not always the best advice maybe, but it's child appropriate, whatever they're doing. But they do try to support each other a lot. And they recognize things, they pick up on things. So-and-so wasn't on the bus. And my daughter this morning, I said something about, I said, well, the bus is gone, he's not at the bus stop. And she said, oh, he hasn't been at the bus stop for 7 days.
Oh.
Who knew? She did.
She was paying attention to that.
Paying attention to that. They pick up on kids who are absent and maybe you came in late for second period and you were gone again third. They pick up on those things, they notice. I don't know if they always know how to act, but they're very supportive via text, via hugs, they might give each other a back rub or drop a note, but they notice things that adults in the busy world overlook. And maybe we don't want to see everything.
We tend to be so busy that I think it makes it easier not to see everything sometimes.
But I think kids will slow down and they will take care of one another better than we could ever imagine.
I think you're exactly right. And one other thing that you mentioned was the age-appropriate information that is shared, right? Because I think it could be lots of different ages things happen, right? Like, there can be a loss when they're a baby or 2 years old or 4 years old, all the way, forever. And giving that age-appropriate information, I think, is really important.
It is.
Not only does it help them process it and heal, but it allows them the opportunity to help as well. I was speaking with a group of preschool parents recently, and just talking about all the ways they can get their kids and preschoolers involved. Maybe something's happening with the neighbor, and they can now be in charge of taking the dog on a walk, right? How fun is that for a kid to have some responsibility and feel the same thing that adults often feel when they have the opportunity to help someone?
Absolutely.
Little kids can feel that too.
Absolutely. Writing a note, telling jokes. We have a friend too, and my daughter's job is to tell him jokes. They're not necessarily good jokes, but they make him laugh. There's cleaning, there's, again, the laundry.
Right.
But yeah, little kids, everyone can help in some kind of way. Drawing a picture. One of our neighbors is 101 years old, and she's having difficulty walking. And so what our kids do is they draw pictures and they tape them to her living room window from the outside. So when she draws the curtains, she sees pictures.
Oh, I love that.
So we don't engage with her. Currently, we don't want to get her sick or spread germs by any. But it's something that she can look forward to a couple of times a week.
Spreading germs with little kids. That is such a huge thing to think about if you're the person with little kids, especially back to school season, right? Everybody is sick. Even my high schooler is sick because that's what happens. But being super aware and cognizant of not wanting to bring your germs that you got from every snotty little kid in the school into someone else's home. There are often a lot of times, again, like talking about age-appropriate things, there are a lot of times that your kids don't need to know information, don't need to go into someone else's home, they don't need to be visiting in a hospital. While they might normally provide a lot of joy for someone, taking them into a hospital when someone's not feeling well is not always as...
Well, especially if it's not a family member. This is not a grandparent, this is not... If it's someone who's not close to them, you're right. Leave them home. Maybe send a video message from them if you want to do that.
Exactly.
But yes, leave them home from the hospital unless, like I said, it's a very close family member.
I would agree with that. But I think there's so many other things that they can do. Like you already mentioned, I love the taping those to the window. Taking her trash out, probably, right? Like...
Yeah, and we did take her trash out, and then she got it now where the people come to her door and bring it to the curb. But yeah, drawing pictures, sending voice messages.
Exactly.
If you catch your kids giggling and you want to record them, I mean, man, if you opened up a voice message and you got 6-year-old giggling, right?
Yeah.
I mean, plus they can save that too.
They can.
And then you just hear that giggle, or a baby's belly laugh is the best thing. Sometimes people just need to hear something that's not bad news.
That is exactly right. Sometimes people just need to hear something that's not bad news.
Yeah, giggle, laugh.
I love that.
Those are great. Or pictures of your kids, hitting the ball on t-ball. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can send to people to help brighten their day without coming into their space.
Right.
Right.
Yes. Now, you and I have already discussed how food into our homes is not always safe. But one of my love languages is cooking food for other people. So I enjoy doing that. And for a lot of families, it is okay to have food come in. And I remember when my kids were little and we were making a meal for someone, and they said, oh, well, they love goldfish. Like, this was one of their friends. And so I said, well, okay, I guess we should go. She's like, we definitely need a bag of goldfish. So allowing the kids to put their ideas in with all of those things that you're doing as well.
Absolutely. Ownership over the deed is a wonderful thing, because you want to teach them anyway, on how, and help them cultivate helping other people. So definitely. And then when they give the idea, you need to incorporate the idea on some level. On some level, yes. Because don't let that go by the wayside. Correct. Exactly. Yeah, if you don't have goldfish in the house, you've got to stop and get them.
Well, you've got to.
Because again, they'll notice that you did not incorporate the idea, whether it's goldfish or chocolate chip cookies or whatever the idea was, they'll notice.
Oh, yes. And maybe let them go to the store with you to get the goldfish.
Absolutely.
And then they can have even more ownership over it. And draw a picture to take along with.
Yes.
And then, but maybe leave them at home when you're dropping the food off.
You're dropping it off, yeah. Especially if you're maybe drop it off, but if you're gonna go in, absolutely, leave them at home.
I agree with that, leaving them at home. Yeah. I think we've covered a lot of the things that I really like to make sure we think about. And there's so much, right? Like, there's so many spaces we can dig in. But one other area, as a school administrator and as a school teacher and guidance counselor, what are things, like, specifically that you have seen? Something another guest mentioned for us was making sure you have somebody else listed for emergency pickups.
Yes, definitely. And if there isn't and something happens, making sure that someone's got that covered, even in an emergency, that someone else can handle that. I think you'd always want to have 2 or 3 people in addition to the main 2, just in case something happens. And of course, we never want to think that something's going to happen, but inevitably it does.
Right.
And you want to make certain that your child isn't left there, out in the cold without someone to pick him or her up. Mm-hmm. So I would say 2 or 3 people, even if you never will use them, put them on the list. And is it important for the family or someone on that list to notify the school that something's happening? Yes, and that's hard, because then the administrator or the counselor, whoever it is, has to go retrieve the child with a straight face, right? Mm-hmm. Because at this point, I did have a situation where little girl's mom had died. And I had to go get her to hand her over to her aunt and keep a straight face and let her aunt deliver the news to her. And so, it has to be someone who's going to be able to hold it together enough to, make sure the child has a safe exit. Right. In the transition there. Oh, wow. Yeah, these are things that there's a lot around that. There's a lot around that. And, we had a student die, not at school, but the morning before school, and then her brother came to pack up her locker. So making sure that we know when someone's coming. Right. And making sure that their family member has support there. And making sure that what they're putting the belongings in isn't a trash bag. Maybe go ahead and make a nice box, decorate it. Maybe the child's peers can decorate a nice box so that when it's being emptied, it's not going into the trash. Or this family in particular wanted to empty it, but maybe offering to empty the locker, or the desk or whatever it is for them, so they don't have to. Maybe you could deliver it to the home instead of having someone come in. But it's all those things that just, the basis is being humane. Right. It's just being humane and empathetic and supportive to people who need it. And kind of thinking about it before it happens, so you can be prepared for the families to come in.
Right. In elementary school, I don't remember which, I can picture where we were in school, and one of the boys in my class, his grandpa died. And he lived with his grandpa, and then it was right towards the end of the school year, and he was then gone for the rest of the year. And I don't know what the teacher did, but I'm thinking now how lovely it would have been if we all could have created, like you said, a box to write on, to send a little bit of a message, because we didn't get the opportunity to say goodbye to him for the summer either. Right? So thinking ahead on that, and how special it will be for the family now to have all of that stuff instead of a trash bag.
Right.
So, knowing that middle school lockers, probably most of it needs to go in the trash anyway, but that is not the time for that.
It's not the time. Yeah, and again, give them some dignity, and they can sort through it on their own, on their own time.
On their own time.
Yeah.
Yes.
But also, I'm glad you said that, because also not making the choice for them on what's valuable.
Right, because you have no idea what's valuable to them and what's not, and especially when there's death and grieving.
Right.
That's just so difficult.
Right.
So difficult. Well, Samantha, I'm so happy to chat with you. Before we're done, I have a final question for you.
Okay.
And that is, it's kind of a two-part question. What is your favorite thing to do for someone else if they are having any kind of major life event? And then the second part is, what is the best thing you've ever received, or your favorite thing? And help, gift, whatever.
So my favorite things, there's two. One of them, I like to go on walks. So I'll take the person and walking or sitting with them and let them guide. If they want to be quiet, we can be quiet. If they want to talk, we can talk. But I kind of let them lead, because when you're going through it, you feel like there's nothing you have control over. So I let them have control over our moment, our conversation, our activity, whatever. And I'm just there to sit. There have been times when I just sit, and maybe that person cries, maybe that person walks, and I'm just there. I also am a member of a massage club. Oh. And sometimes I donate my massage that month to that person. They don't have to use it right then. They can use it whenever. But it's just an hour of just quiet and peace and serenity while taking care of yourself. You can cry at a massage if you want to. You can let it out. You can do whatever you want to. But I have gifted my massages to people before. And that's probably my favorite thing, because I know that at some point they're going to have a good time.
Uh-huh. Oh, I love those.
Yeah.
I love those a lot.
Yeah. What people have done for me, probably the same thing. Just sitting with me. Not telling me what I need. Mm-hmm. You need to eat. I don't like that. Right. I like when people just listen. And that's probably why I do it. I like when people do that with me. Just sit and listen. Or not, and just be a friend for just a little while. Mm-hmm. And let me lead for a little while.
I love this. Well, Samantha, thank you so much for joining me at my kitchen counter while
thank
we
you,
dig
thank
into
you,
these
thank you.
topics. Thanks.
Thank you.
Kitchen Chats is brought to you by What Friends Do. Never miss a conversation by subscribing to Kitchen Chats with Aimee Kandrac on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. You can find more resources for those kitchen chat moments in your life by going to whatfriendsdo.com and following What Friends Do on your favorite social media platforms.